what's the process of doing the bill from proposing the bill to pass its third reading?
So this bill has been the most scrutinised bill in parliamentary history. Most bills only take a few months to go through the House, but this has taken 2 years. So I've been working behind the scenes with David to make sure that it actually got through all of the stages with a majority, because you needed 61 votes at multiple stages throughout the bill's progress. The most important part was the select committee, which is where a group of MPs sit down and they go through the bill bit by bit and recommend changes to it. And we knew very early on that the members in charge of that part of the process were not going to get on and they weren't going to recommend many changes. So we independently set out what our changes were going to be to signal to all of the other members of Parliament, you can still vote for this bill because it will change and it will be restricted, and we're actually going to answer your concerns. So there were some concerns about, like the disability community, and so we said we'll restrict it. So only the terminally ill will be eligible, and we'll make sure that for New Zealand First votes, that it will go to the referendum. And so we worked behind the scenes for about a year on that. And then I worked personally with some of the best lawyers in the country to redraft the bill and put in those changes so that they're actually, perfectly drafted. Yeah.
So are there any doctors' suggestions be considered in the process of the bill?
The doctors?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the doctors, we did make a change that there are 2 doctors now involved, but one of them has to have at least 5 years' experience, because there was a concern that 2 doctors who are just out of university might sign off on a death. So having that more experienced doctor do the second opinion actually gave people a lot more comfort that this would be a stronger requirement in the bill, and that people can't just slip through the process. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think is the most difficult job for this bill?
The most difficult part was, because David is one MP, making sure that all of the parties in Parliament agreed with the changes. So if you had one change to limit a certain part of the bill, you then had to go and negotiate with all of the other parties to make sure that they were happy and still going to vote for it. And I think it's a huge credit to David that he was able to go and work with so many members of Parliament who have such different political opinions and all come out in agreement.
Yeah, and do you think which MP is the most difficult to persuade?
The most difficult ones would definitely be the ones who have religious backgrounds. So there were a huge range, mainly from the National Party, who would never ever vote for the bill. And so it didn't matter what sort of change you might recommend to them. It became very apparent that they just didn't like it at all. Some of the other MPs were a lot easier to work with because they actually had a genuine concern about the way it might have been drafted. And you could go back and say, well, this is a change that we can make. Would you be happy with that? And that alleviated their concerns. But for the ones that are just passionately against it because of their church view, some of them became quite emotional and quite heated in arguments. And I don't think that was very helpful for the process at all.
Yes. Any interesting stories to share, or any stories that impressed you most?
I would say one of the people that impressed me the most is a new MP from the National Party called Tim van der Molen. And so we sat down with him many times, and he had literally gone through the bill with a highlighter and underlined pencil with hours worth of questions. And I really, really appreciated that there was an MP who was so engaged in the process and taking it so seriously. Yeah.
So would you please share us your feelings when you're doing these things?
It is emotionally a roller coaster. So at times you're dealing with people who do have terminal illnesses, and having all of those stories brought to you can actually be quite overwhelming at times. But then it makes you get up in the morning and think, you know what, we've got to pass it for these people because they are suffering terribly, and this is their only option. When the bill actually passed, it was amazing because so many of those people actually joined us down in Wellington, and so we were able to celebrate with them.